Darshana is what is observed with the naked eye. For instance, you go to the temple to have darshan of the devata in the garbhagruha. Therefore, when Sanatana Dharma speaks of darshana, it is the ultimate pramana evidence, it has been directly observed, experienced. It is not theorized, speculative, or postulated. It may have begun with a postulate, but it is the realization through direct experience that counts. Philosophy is a speculation built on top of logical statements built on top of certain propositions and postulates. Darshana is direct. Darshana is the ultimate proof. Philosophy is more like a well-considered hypothesis that is sound in its formulation. Darshana is absolute. Philosophy is relative and can be demolished by a counter-example proving that it is flawed due to one or more assumptions underpinning its logic. When we say we have several darshanas, outsiders interpreted this as several schools of thought. They couldn't understand that this was not a school of thought, but rather an observed fact or reality or experience. Our darshanas are called sampradayas because they are equivalently samanam, looking at the same phenomenon, though from many different vantage points. This is where the analogy of the blind men experiencing different parts of an elephant comes from. They are all looking at the same thing, but experiencing different aspects of it, and thus, describing it differently. One describes it as long and snake-like trunk, another describes it as a column leg, still another describes it as leathery and wrinkly skin on its back, another described it as thin and rope-like tail. All of them were experiencing the same elephant from a different point of view or vantage. Darshana. Dvaitam and Advaitam are both different darshanas, both equally true, but dependent on one's vantage point. Each have several qualifiers and variants, but essentially they all describe the same basic reality, and the underlying reality is that the Supreme Consciousness Brahman exists. Astika, it Brahman exists, a statement that can only be made by someone who directly realized the truth of this statement. Thus, Hindus are those who accept the pramana of those authorities who have clearly stated this to be unequivocally true. Astika Darshana, it Brahman exists. Those authorities of whom I speak include the Veda as a corpus of knowledge as well as the Arshis, Jnanis, Munis, and others from our various sampradayas who have realized and experienced this truth directly. It is a definitive absolute truth here that has been realized, experienced firsthand. There is no question of whether Hinduism is true. For a Hindu, it is merely a question of when a Hindu comes to the realization of that truth. To hold fast to that truth, keeping it at the center, as we revolve around it trying to understand it, is known as Shraddha, and to approach it with a one-pointed focus is known as Bhakti. The combination of Bhakti Shraddha is the prerequisite for one to be on the spiritual journey towards that truth. When we do pradakshina of our devatas, we keep them in the center, and revolve around them with folded hands in namaskara mudra. This is Shraddha, holding the truth in the center, and constantly churning our minds around that truth, until it yields its secrets to us. When we do clockwise pradakshina circumambulation around the devata with hands in namaskara mudra, it literally means we are begging that supreme truth to reveal itself to us, as it is. This is why there is a space around the temple where devotees are allowed to do parikrama circumambulation. Each layer of truth is revolving around another layer of truth, and all these mini-truths themselves revolve around the supreme truth, or Paramatma. These 33 categories of devatas are all the mini-truths, and all of them revolve around the supreme Paramatma. Just as a CEO delegates his authority and his will to others for execution, the Paramatma delegates to minor devatas to carry out specific functions, tasks, which they execute without fail. That is their function and reason for existence. The entire gamut of this cosmos and other universes all revolve around that supreme Paramatma, who supports all this by a fraction of his Shakti. The first level of understanding that ordinary humans can approach to understanding this is the Sun, in whose orbit the other planets are locked. We call the Sun Rao, Ravi, Surya, etc. as Pratyaksha, visible, manifest, Narayana, because his form is the closest visible form to that supreme light brilliance, the supreme Narayana. That supreme Narayana, that Paramatma, is the supreme truth of all truths. The greatest and highest truth.